Hi guys, what's up with this guy in the White House, Donald Trump? I think he's the elephant in the room. He's what everybody is talking about. He's what everybody doesn't understand. And I'm gonna do my best to explain to my viewers what Donald Trump is about, and mostly for foreign viewers. Here in America, people more or less get it somehow. But if you want to dig into what Donald Trump is and why he's president today, you gotta look at history. Like everything else, things began a long time ago. First World War, the American came and helped. America was turning into a world power by then. When Second World War erupted, America was recognized as the foremost power in the world. Firstly, America, they want to stay out of Second World War. They didn't want to do anything. They wouldn't have anything to do with the Europeans fighting or the Japanese fighting and everything. Then came Pearl Harbor, and the Americans went in big time. When the Germans, they attacked Britain was almost running out of resources. The American factories, they flew bombs and planes and food, everything over to the British. So the Americans, they more or less saved the day for the Europeans in combination with other things. After Second World War, America, they installed the world order that we know today. We call it the liberal world order. And that was a world order for the first time in history that was based on freedom, on liberty, on democracy. Meaning there was no longer colonialism. America didn't go around and made colonials and extracted value there like we saw in the past. America, they were the policemen of the world, and they said basically, we're going to defend freedom, we're going to defend democracy, and we're going to do it to the best of our ability. And in that period, there was only one country in the world who could do that. That was America. At that time, 95 or 98% of washing machines were here. Everything were in America at that time. In the 50s, the post-Second World War period, America was light years ahead of the rest of the world. So they got to decide how is the world gonna look like. Of course, Russia, they tried to be a counterweight to that. They wanted to impose the totalitarian style of government, where we have a dictator who dictates the terms, and the people, they work, they pay taxes, and they have to keep their mouth shut. America saw it differently. And America did a great job getting Europe back on its feet, protecting Europe, building a freedom-oriented world. They went to Vietnam, tried to push the communists out there. So it's been a long process where America, they built the world in their own picture. They wanted to emulate what they had here, the land of the free, for the rest of the world. All this cost an enormous amount of money. But America had the money back then. America was the industrial might of the world. We had all the factories. Everything was being made here. Things went well. In 1990, the Eastern Bloc, the counterweight to the liberal democracy that we are used to, that America guaranteed, they collapsed. So from 1990, all of us were sure, now it's just free, there's a free road ahead, there's no obstacles. Now it's freedom, it's democracy, it's free trade for everybody. But it didn't turn out that way. Here 30 years later, China, they've taken over. That means they haven't taken over yet, but their economy have grown tremendously since the 1980s, since Deng Xiaoping tried to emulate the American way by still staying communist. So today, the Chinese, they're the elephant in the room today. What's happened in China is what we all have to keep our eyes on. There's a lot of talk between what is going on in Europe and America. They fight each other of tariffs and this, but all of it doesn't matter. What's going on is that China have outcompeted our middle class for factory jobs. And the way they got away with that was that America and Europe, in the last 2 decades, have instigated the World Trade Organization, where everybody should be able to trade freely without tariffs. And as you all know, everything is made in China today. So the Chinese, they produce goods over there, and they're good at it, they're efficient. And they send it over to us, and they pay next to nothing for it. So all of us consumers, we get to buy stuff on the cheap. We barely pay anything for it. Nothing costs any money any longer. It's such a change. It's so nice to be a consumer in the West these days. We can buy whatever you want for no money. But that whole thing have come at a price, because at the same time, the Chinese, they wouldn't allow us to send goods over there. For example, if you want to sell a car in China, the Chinese government, they demanded that you set up a factory over there and had a Chinese partner for at least 50% ownership in that car factory. That meant not only that profit had to be shared with the Chinese, but also knowledge had to be shared with the Chinese. At the same time, the Chinese had a huge state operation where they stole industrial secrets at the European factories, the American factories. So here we are today. The Chinese, they have all the jobs, they have all the money. All the Western world countries are running huge deficits. In America, it's been under Obama, who spent and borrowed more money than all other presidents combined before him. Can you believe it? And now the Republicans came in office, they promised to change that. Of course they didn't. They're spending the exact same amount. It's just ridiculous. In Europe, it's more or less the same story. So right now, things are looking rosy in China. They're growing. They have a tremendous asset of gold, foreign currency, stocks, bonds. So the next century, unless we do something, is going to be Chinese. And that leads me back to today's topic, which was Trump. Why did Trump get elected? Here where I'm living on the eastern coast, that's called the Gold Coast. It's called where all the elites are living. And that's how America turned out now. On the East Coast, we have a lot of expensive property. We have a lot of rich people who are lawyers, who are doctors, who maybe run factories abroad. The same thing is going on in California. But in between those two eastern and western points in America, there's the mainland. In that mainland, we used to produce everything. We used to have factories that produced everything the world needed. And for us ourselves. Right now, there's no more factories. The factories have disappeared to China because it's cheaper. And a businessman, it's impossible for him to run a profitable business in his own country. It's the same in Europe. The factories are disappearing to China. And the reason they're doing that is not because the Chinese work harder than us, it's not because they're smarter than us, it's because of the liberal order that we put in place with the World Trade Organization and no trade barriers and all that. So here we are right now, and what are you going to do about it? All the elites on the coasts and the big cities in Europe, in Paris, in Copenhagen, in Berlin, they're happy. Everything is good. Real estate prices goes up. But the mainland, where the real country is, they're not fine. There's no jobs anymore, and the jobs there's no money in it any longer. And here in America, you see former middle-class people, they're fighting for jobs now with illegal immigrants coming from the south that barely pay them living wage. And the solution to all this, some people say, is to raise the taxes on the rich, raise the minimum wage, so you pay people at least $15 an hour. But all those things, if we do that, it's just gonna put us into an even bigger disadvantage to China. The more taxes we have here, the higher wages we are forced to pay, the less factories we're going to open, the less business we're going to open. If we want to compete, and that's a big if we want to compete with the Chinese, then we have to lower our taxes and we have to lower the minimum wage, and that's painful. I'm not disagreeing with that. It's painful to do that because those people at the bottom of our society or even lower middle class, they're hurting, and they're hurting big time. So what Donald Trump is doing, and he's been promising these people, is we're going to change all this. We're going to stop all the importing from China. And that's what he's doing right now. He is trying to get the flood of goods that going this way into our country and the flood of capital that goes to China to stop. And that stream have to stop, because we are draining our societies of capital. We're draining our society of factories. It have to end. Donald Trump's methods to do it, I do not necessarily agree with that. But he have taken the bull by its horn. He is forcing this big tanker to turn. We have to stop the direction that's been going on for almost 30 years now, since the Berlin Wall fell. The liberal trade order that's going on around the world is making everybody richer. Yes, I'm richer because I can buy stuff at Walmart now for next to no money. So my paycheck brings me much further. I have a much higher living standard because I can buy those cheaply, high quality products made in China. But it comes at an expense, and the expense is that the core of the Western world is falling apart. Only the elites are thriving, and that's what Trump is all about. And I'm gonna put up a lot of blogs about Trump, a lot of blogs about policy. But let this be the beginner to understand why Trump is in office. Thank you very much. That's all for today.